This is Palo Alto, the heart of Silicon Valley, California. Facebook started one block that way, Twitter one block that way. And down the road you've got Mountain View and Cupertino, home to Google, Apple and Android. But you see, while those tech companies have changed so much of the way we live our lives online, it's their employees that are changing the way we live our lives offline. 36-year-old Australian Daniel Faber is a long way from his hometown in rural northern Tasmania.
Hey, nice to meet you. You did have to choose the hottest day in Silicon Valley for this.
It's a beautiful day. It's always a beautiful day.
Today, he's taking me for a hike to a lookout high above Silicon Valley. The space engineer has lived in countless countries in his pursuit of his entrepreneurial off-Earth dreams. He's only recently relocated to Silicon Valley to work on his asteroid mining startup.
So welcome to Silicon Valley. Here it all is.
Wow.
Everything is in front of you. So many things that have changed the world have come out of this valley. It's a really incredible place. It's got a community of people that understand it, how to put that together. Not just new companies and new ideas, but how to actually take them in, turn them into big companies that impact the whole world.
So you've got Google, NASA.
Yep. Just at the bottom of the hill here is Apple.
Apple.
Further up there is Cisco, Yahoo as well, and then San Jose with a million startups.
It's rare that you can stand somewhere and look at the internet.
Long before Google and Facebook were dreamt up, California in the 1960s was notorious for its alternative living arrangements. Hippie dreamers creating communes and disrupting the norm of a nuclear family household. But today in the US, 50% of adults are single and more than a quarter of households have only one person. Here in the valley, when the dot-com bubble burst in the late 90s, it left grand and ghostly mansions, departed as quickly as they were built. In 2006, a loathing for conspicuous consumption, together with an empty 5,000 square foot mansion, gave a bunch of NASA engineers an idea. An intentional community where residents are curated to fit in. You see, the commune is not dead. It lives on in the form of Silicon Valley's Rainbow Mansion. And Daniel is the newest member. He's invited me to spend the next 24 hours in Silicon Valley's biggest nerd mansion.
Beck's monologuing, grab a drink.
So this is the main entryway.
So,
Yeah.
grand piano.
So this is what we call Paradise. The little house out the back. You've seen the grand entry.
Yes, it is. It's lifestyles of the rich and famous.
And then there's the mystery room.
The mystery room.
The mystery room.
The mystery room. So when you say mystery room,
Well, what is it for?
well, it looks like it's for some sort of like late night shisha conversations.
It's a mystery.
Rainbow Mansion. It's where the residents are carefully chosen for their entrepreneurial ambitions and ideas and are often working on individual projects. Mike Grace is one of the co-op's longest residents.
When you tell people it's a co-op, they have something very particular in mind. You're like, oh, you guys are communist hippies, probably in a cult. And it's not that at all. So we've really got 7 full-time permanent residents. And then we have guests who come in. Whenever we have an open room, we have something on the order of like 50 applicants.
The people who are currently living in the house are from a really interesting range of backgrounds. There's a computer programmer who works on cloud computing. There's a couple of PhD students and NASA employees working on synthetic biology. I think it was one of the first sort of intentional communities of nerds. And so professionally, it's a great place to network. But at the end of the day, it's also a home.
Daniel and his embryonic startup have taken over the garage.
So we're starting with these really small spacecraft. We needed a space to get set up, and the garage here at Rainbow Mansion is an excellent space. It's got some history. A lot of startup companies have started here. Some of them are quite successful now.
Today, Daniel is having a barbecue to try and strengthen his place in the house. His secret weapon, a very Australian hamburger ingredient, and beers from his home state.
Just gonna get some shade over the barbecue.
3 space engineers and we can't get a tenner.
He's invited quite a number of people that, unfortunately, don't seem to be showing up.
So having moved into the house very recently, I am the new kid on the block. And so there's a lot of established interactions and relationships between people and a lot of history in the house.
Nevertheless, after a few beers, even nerds start to loosen up. Well, most of them. Daniel will find out if his barbecue was a success at tonight's house meeting. One of the success stories coming out of the Rainbow Mansion is not another microsatellite or software platform. It's the communal living format itself.
Jay.
Hey Andy,
Nice to meet you.
Former residents of Rainbow are commercialising the idea.
We came up with this idea of how the home could be an experiment around radical sharing in terms of sharing food and cars and space in ways that made our lives better. We were having a lot of fun doing it, and we realized there was potentially a business in it, a real estate business that helped more properties and more spaces come into being like this.
In fact, houses like the farmhouse here in Berkeley have governance software that coordinates every facet of residents' lives.
We have a way of breaking down the various levels of consumption so that people who eat more pay more and eat less pay less, and then continually looking at how we can refine it.
They're hoping that in the same way that Uber disrupted the taxi industry, they can disrupt the real estate industry.
Yeah, with our business model that we're moving into is really real estate management and acquisition models.
But crucially, in their houses, it's a top-down type of micro-governance where systems of running the place are largely set before you enter the house.
The problem is if you sell a house as this is a place where you can go to meet a bunch of people who are doing cool stuff, eventually you have a bunch of people who want to meet people that are doing cool stuff and know people who are doing cool stuff. And you want to avoid those people like the goddamn plague. They're the parasites of Silicon Valley.
But the Rainbow Mansion looks like it will lose its longest resident anyway.
So I'm engaged right now. My fiance and I live here. We both work at NASA. And we're getting to that point in life where we're starting to think about the pitter-patter of little feet.
When I see your life, you owe your job opportunity to Rainbow, and then you owe your romantic connection to your job, which you got from Rainbow.
Right, right.
Everything comes back to Rainbow in your life.
I literally cannot imagine where I would be right now if it wasn't for this. I very much doubt it would be anywhere as nice.
Thank you. What's on there?
It's not till now that I discover the purpose of the mystery room. It's a house meeting, but more like gossip about who's applying for what startups and how they can keep the tone of their parties down. Well, the music anyway.
We threw a 1920s party and it was pretty fun.
Good job.
I'm thinking about throwing another party.
It was actually a relatively intellectual party, and one of the things that I'd like us to be able to do is to sort of turn the loud bit down at sort of sometime in the morning, and then switch into sort of board games and quiet socialisation mode rather than just opening the door and leaving everybody out of it.
But Daniel's barbecue seems to have worked. His inclusion in the house seems complete.
I think that a lot of people who come to Silicon Valley have, if you like, the idealism and optimism. They see a different world and they want to see that world come to be. And that's what makes Rainbow exciting. And that's a very powerful thing.